Yeah. I don't know.
I don't know. Something nice.
Welcome back to Wook Plus. I am Weekend Wook, joined this morning by Cam Herdt. Hi, Cam. How's it going, man?
What's up, man? Good. It's early
Thank
on
you
the West Coast.
I was gonna say thanks for waking up so early. Holy shit.
Dude, I'm up this early. It's just how it goes.
Yeah, natural professional. Although you've been doing a lot of stand-up stuff. That has to hurt. Do you always wake up this early, even when you have like late nights and things?
Yeah, I really do. So I've been working a bunch of part-time jobs during the strike, the actors strike, and one of them is a yoga studio job where I've got to go open up the yoga studio at like 5:30 in the morning. And so
Oh.
I'm kind of just up now.
Yeah, I'm up that early for an entirely different reason. I got a baby and
Sure.
so I haven't been getting a ton of sleep, but I can't imagine doing it voluntarily. Hey,
Well,
SC loves
I
your
get paid.
content.
I get
Oh
paid.
yeah, that's true. Yeah, right,
Yeah.
right. The whole idea of like a morning job is like blowing my mind. I'm like, oh, you wake up for work. That's crazy.
Every morning I wake up, I'm like, these motherfuckers are so lucky I'm broke. I would not, I would not be doing this.
Yeah, well, I got to tell you, from like someone that works like an office job, the whole advent of work from home has been a lifesaver. Because I'm
Yeah,
just
dude.
like, I'm not a morning person at all. But waking up a little bit later and I'm gonna commute, come downstairs, and then doing this is fucking great. So
Yeah, man.
so
Yeah.
I don't know. There's a lot of different things to jump into, but I found it interesting that we were talking earlier in the green room about like your history and where you came up and stuff. And you're actually started out in Chicago with Second City. And people that have watched this channel remember Chad used to be on here, World's Greatest Chad. He was a Second City guy. And I just got to say, I fucking love talking to Second City people. I think you guys super interesting. A lot of things. So what was that like? How long ago was that? Were you recently or when did you switch out of there?
I started there in like 2016.
Okay.
And I had been doing stand up in Chicago. I'd like just moved down like 6 months before, and I was doing open mics and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, I had a boss that had done it. He had done Second City like in the early 2000s, and he was like swore by it, and he's like, "You're gonna love this." And he was like drunk at a trade show with me, and he signed me up for my first Second City class. And I was like, I don't want to do like theater or whatever, but I ended up like really loving it. And
How long did you do it for?
until I moved out of Chicago. So I did the classes at Second City for that first like year, and then I did their like graduate program, the conservatory.
Yeah.
And then there's another building in Chicago called IO, which is like kind of like the more long form improv, and Second City's like sketch, like written like almost like a play. And I was doing both of them a bunch. Yeah, I was just doing all the improv stuff. And then 2021 I moved out here.
Oh, so that was right after the pandemic, I guess, right? What a
Yeah.
time. Oh,
Yeah,
hey,
that
sorry. I don't want
go
to throw a
ahead.
curveball, but SC threw in a controversial question. Is that cool? I'll let you decide.
Please,
SC,
please.
what you got? Throw out a controversial question for us. Yeah, it's a little, it's a little bit, oh, fuck. Sorry, man. My brain just short circuited. I was just gonna say it's a little bit interesting how we have a really nice flow in the green room, and then we come live, and my thoughts get all jumbled up.
Right.
So let's get into your.
If people could have just heard what we were talking about in the green
It
room,
was fucking gold.
we
It was
figured it
so
out.
good.
We figured everything out.
There you go, Cam. What is the difference between fish and the Goose fans?
Oh man.
He asked you. He said it was controversial.
Yeah, he did say that. There's a lot of differences. I'm gonna say, okay, this is what happened this spring. Okay, I saw Fish at the Hollywood Bowl, and then I saw Goose like the next week in San Diego. Um, the the Goose crowd smelled incredible. Okay, there's a lot of deodorant in that crowd. Not a lot of wooks, to be honest. It was a
Yeah.
lot of like college kids checking them out. or like people who were really big fans that had all of the merch.
Super custy.
The like Goose merch. Not there's no lot merch yet or whatever.
Oh, well,
Fish
vending's
fans.
another thing to talk about, but
Yeah, that's a completely different story. That's hot right. That's hot right now.
that's a hot button topic.
Um, but fish fans, I mean, it just goes way deeper. It's been 40 years, and so like, I don't know. The entitlement is there for both of them. Goose fans love that they think that they've got the next fish and that they're seeing like early 90s fish, and fish fans love that they saw 90s fish and
Yeah.
yeah, that kind of thing.
I think what I find interesting about Goose too is that there's obviously a cross section in that Venn diagram of fish fans that are also Goose fans. And as somebody who started as a fish fan, you can't help but see Goose from that perspective. But Goose has a whole other aspect to their fan base that doesn't come from the fish community. They're not just like an offshoot. And I feel like, and I remember talking to my brother, my uncle about this with the Dead. Like a lot of Deadheads thought in the 90s that fish fans were just an offshoot of the Dead. Like it was like a chunk of their fan base. And it was harder to see that it was like a Venn diagram and that there were people that liked both, but then there was completely different things. I think
Yeah.
Goose and Fish are way more inbred, just like with the way like Rick and the band have accepted and have like, they work together a lot. And like, I don't know, I feel like Trey and Fish made a concerted effort to like distance themselves and not play any Dead songs and not like, do anything for a while. But I don't know. I think the one thing with the two bands though is I like the bands better than the fans a lot of times. It's
Oh,
like I have a great time
yeah,
at the
dude.
show and then the fans are all like, make it something.
Listen, I've been that way with fish fans in the past. Like I've been, my brother, my older brother and my younger brother are both huge, massive fish fans too. And they're like, always on fantasy tour. They're in all they're like Facebook group chats. They're like doing Twitter. They're doing all the stuff. And I wasn't doing that for a long time because I'm like, the fan base can be a fucking ton, dude. Like, when you go to shows, it's not like that. Like when you're sitting next to people are like stoked and they're excited that they're there and they're like having fun and
Right,
cracking
but you put it
jokes.
online and you give a little anonymity to it, and then like the toxicity comes out. Although
Yeah,
there's a lot of positives too, though. It's weird because it's like a
totally.
community that I feel like is some of the best I've seen in people and some of the worst I've seen in people have been in both within this community. But I got to say that the positives outweigh or outshine. There's more positives you see in the community than negatives. I think it's
Uh,
just the negatives louder, maybe, right?
yeah, it's easy to point a finger at, and like all the good stuff is just kind of happening all the time. And like, with all the stuff that I've eventually then started posting and like being a part of the, internet community, like I haven't really gotten too much negative, like to like outwardly to me, like
Yeah.
people don't usually message me shitty things or like every
Well,
once in a
that's
while
good.
someone will like quote tweet it and be like, this guy sucks. But like that happens to everything. Like, like,
Well, I
um,
mean, you're so positive, and like I don't want to like talk all this nice shit about you and blow smoke up your ass and make you all blush on camera, but like I
yeah,
mean, you
don't do
really do
that.
have like a very like positive, likable content, and like you'd have to be kind of a big asshole or troll to like, because you're not being critical, really. I mean, you're being critical in a funny way, but you're not like, like I've come on here and unfortunately I've had to say like I didn't really like a show and I thought it kind of sucked. And like I hate doing that because it's like I don't want to yuck someone's yum and whatever. And I understand when people push back on that. And that's like a decision I made. It's like I part of our show is, being critical and analysis, and analysis. So, but like you're
Yeah.
not doing that. You're just bringing joy and comedy. Sorry, I was getting mixed up between comedian, and comedy. But you're just bringing comedy to the scene. So I mean, what kind of asshole would have to troll on you for that? That would be nuts.
Yeah. 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 Well, thanks, man. I appreciate that. It's endlessly funny, like how seriously we take fish and stuff. Like
It's ridiculous.
it's endlessly funny. And it's like ultimately pretty harmless. Like, it's just people loving their thing. Like that's it.
Well, I gotta say, you're spot on with your videos. I just saw I guess it was one of your more recent ones about the Every Fish Jam podcast, and I was listening to it, and I was like, I was almost certain it wasn't a direct jab at like the things that we do because like I think, but I was like at the same time I was like, yeah, he's right. No, that's I'm pretty sure I've said that. I'm like I've heard RJ say that, and I know Ryan said that, and like and the attendance bias guys, and it's like you're very I guess that's the skill of comedian, right? Like being observant. But like you nail the fucking stereotype, right on the head.
I mean, it's super fun. And that is just like how me and like my brothers and like, my couple buddies that I see fish with, like, that's how we are talking about the shows on the phone. And like, every once in a while, like those guys will just say something where I'm like, what? like, what do like I said before, the word entitlement, like some of the stuff that we say in our group chat about these guys, like about shows that we're not at, like we'll be texting each other and then I'm
Right.
like,
Right. Like
shut the fuck up, dude. Like,
right. Or like Trey missed like 3 notes on that rift. And like, meanwhile, I don't even understand how he even began to comprehend you know what I mean? Like, I couldn't write a single note of that. And yet I could sit here and be like, oh, he missed 3 notes. Look at me
yeah.
judging this genius.
You're also
Um,
like looking into why he missed the notes. You're like, yeah, it could be this stop on the tour. I think that
right.
him and Fishman just got in a fight this morning. Like people are like,
right. Well, we often fall into the trap of talking about rotation. They're like, oh, they started repeating and like talking about like
yeah,
what that means, but then a lot of times we'll say, oh, they need to play songs more often. That's why they're messing it up. And it's like that's bullshit. We don't know. They could have practiced it 100 times, or they could have just came up with, oh, we're gonna add this tonight randomly.
right. And they
Complete
could have randomly
speculation.
nailed it. Like if they nail it, they could have like randomly nailed it, or they could have been playing it a ton and like just kind of fucked it up. You're listening too hard. But
Yeah.
you're also that's also like what makes it beautiful. Like that's the only reason all this stuff is important is because we all make it important, and like
I know. I was just gonna say we got to be careful. Like the people watching right now are the people that enjoy us talking about that shit. We're
you're like,
like
yeah.
criticizing. It's like we don't know what the. No, well, you're right on that. It's important and we take it, but I think the difference is that it's our passion, and there's a difference between something being truly important in the grand scheme of things and something
Yeah.
being a passion of ours. And so it's important in the sense that it's what fuels us creatively, and what it gets us through the day and things. But in the grand scheme of things, it is just a jam band, and we're just a bunch of assholes with microphones talking about it. And we should never take any of this too seriously. That said, I also don't love when people belittle it because it is a huge part of our lives, right? Like, and so it's kind of balancing that. It's like you got to be passionate about it, but, not be a complete asshole at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, I get massive amounts of inspiration from these shows. They're like super fucking important to me. Like I'm listening to every single show that comes out. I like, I yeah, it's super important to me, but also like it is so important to us because they treat it so special and holy and like within this jam scene, like, that's how these shows have gotten treated since the dead. It's like church, like a holy,
It kind
place.
of
And so
is. I feel like that sometimes, like, there's a religious experience to it, without like making it like cult like, but like the way
yeah.
you hear people talk about their, the revelations of the things they feel in their religious experiences, that's kind of how you feel coming out of a show. Like there's a rejuvenation from it.
Yeah, and like the congregation aspect of it and like,
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff. Man, yeah, and I've talked about that with my buddies too about like, we're all guys who like formerly were a part of the church. And so it's like, do we feel like we need to do we feel like we need to go to some place where there's a stage and one guy is on stage and like controlling the whole room? But like, with Fish, for me, it's not so much like I'm connected to it like in my own personal way, like in that sort of a way, but it's also like my older brother like got me into it when I was a kid, and I like wanted to think it was cool because he was cool. Like
How much
there's all
older
these.
is he than you?
He's 10 years older than me. He's my half brother.
Okay.
Yeah, and he's like my older head brother. Like he's a chef now, and he was a chef at my parents' restaurant for a long time, but now he's living in Iowa. And yeah, he saw a bunch of like early 2000 shows, and then kind of like right when they came back, 09 and 2010. And he was always like, playing Tweezer in his car for us, or like he had LimeWire on his computer, and he like downloaded all of the like years of
Yeah.
Fish, and he'd be like, you just gotta like go through all of 97, and like And then
Gave
none
you a
of my
little
friends,
mentoring, gave you a little guide, like start here, listen to this.
yes. And then like none of my friends at school like knew what that was. They like didn't even know what I was talking about. And so it was kind of just like a personal thing. But like, yeah, that was like fish was connected to my family and my brother. So there's like a special like, you can't account for that when I'm like trying to show it to someone. Like,
No, that I 100% understand that. My older brother got me into it too, and very similar timing. The first, you know, album or CD I got, he got what was it? Slip Stitch and Pass was I took from him, or Rift. No, it was Rift and then Slip Stitch, and then took me to my first show and my first like 40 or 50 shows we went together. Like before I had a crew,
yeah.
before I had friends, before I mean like I had friends, but like in the scene, I mean, right? Because like now I go to a show and I'm sure you've experience this, like people recognize, and it's not like that you're super popular, it's just like people recognize you, so you know a lot more people through like the internet, you can hang out with it, and there's like a crew. But like for years and years it was like me and my brother, right? And that bond and that like familial aspect of the shows still resides through and is a very important part of what it is. That's really
Oh
crazy that
yeah.
we have such a similar story with how you got into it.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I mean, I feel like when I was, when you go to shows and you talk to people, there's a lot of people who have that like, yeah, my older brother was like was my door in, and like he was like dealing with some health stuff for a long time and like didn't wasn't going to shows. And like I, graduated high school 2009. I was like peak would have been perfect to be going to all those shows, but like didn't see a show for so long. Like none of my friends wanted to go. Like they're all like Dave Matthews Band people. And I'm like, we can
Right.
do we can do shrooms at other shows. You know that, right? Like we could go, we could go see someone else. And like we were going to Alpine Valley. Like we're going to all these places that they're playing, and I just like, I
Yeah.
could not get my friends to go. And so it was the opposite for me, where like it was the same but opposite. I also didn't have community, and I also like wasn't a part of the like scene. And so the only person I would have been able to go with was my brother. But he just like wasn't able to at the time. And so it took until 2018 for me to go to a show. I
Yeah.
went with
Is he doing better?
he's doing great. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
awesome.
He's doing a lot better. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I
Um,
was gonna say 2018. That's like because you were kind of late. Well, it's late. It's all perspective, right? It's like a thing. But like
yeah.
from my perspective, from when I started, because I was only a couple years earlier, you kind of crashed into the internet community, like of like the scene, pretty fast and hard. Not that long ago, where it was like I don't know if you were on and just kind of not doing things, or if you decided to just join everything. But like with your videos, it's like boom, here you are, and it was kind of awesome. Like the quick uprising of like Cam and your funny ass videos and stuff. Is that shortly after you started seeing them, or was that a different decision? Well, no, I guess that was like even more recently. Holy shit, a lot of time has gone by.
Yeah. Yeah, no, 2018 is kind of like I'm like 1 year into my comedy, 2 years into my comedy
Yeah,
career, or journey. And I'm like not posting any, you know, videos or anything like that. It's not until the pandemic that I even really like try to do any
yeah,
sort of like internet video stuff. And I didn't like doing it. I'm like, this isn't fun. I like doing stuff on stage. I like having an audience. I don't care, about the numbers of this video or whatever. Um, and so they just weren't that fun to make. And then, we're out here. I almost get like a second COVID because of the strike. I'm like, I don't know what to do over this next however long this is going to last. And I didn't have a TikTok. Never had one. And so this last spring, this is like February of last year, I was like, I'm gonna make a TikTok, and I'm not gonna like advertise that I have a TikTok. I'm just gonna like post whatever I think is funny right away. Like I'm not gonna think
yeah,
about it. I'm not gonna think about it too hard. I'm not gonna write it too hard. I'm just gonna whatever it is, like I'm just gonna finish it. I'll do it here at work at the yoga studio since I have so much time on my hands. And I'll just throw it up there. And there's like, 4 or 5 videos of other stuff. And then I'm like obviously in that time getting ready to go see fish in the spring and like, you know, listening to a ton of fish and like, you know, talking about them all the time.
it's
And
on your head, so
it's,
that's where you go
yeah,
naturally.
And I'm also like bringing people to their first shows at the Hollywood Bowl. That's like what the West Coast fish experience has been for me. Like, I don't have my crew out here, so I've got to like convince comedy buddies to like come to the show with me. And so I'm like thinking about the experience a ton, and like, yeah, then I just started posting fish videos, and I think like one of the first one was like, yeah, you know, you know, point of view, you're at your first fish concert, and people were cool about it. After I posted it, I was like, oh shit, people can be kind of mean about fish stuff. Well, I hope they're not, but it's all it's all good if
Good
they
thought to
are.
have after the point.
Well, I mean, like,
Yeah.
I'm like, if they are, it's like fish stuff. It's not the end of they're not like, body shaming me or like, being racist. It's just like,
Right.
we don't like your fish
Way
stuff.
worse shit happens on the internet.
Yeah, I'm like, it's all good. But people were cool about it and like posted it on Twitter, and then like Fish Twitter got a hold of it, and like my friends are like, oh, you're in my Fish Facebook group chat, and I was like, it's super cool, like
Yeah,
the
it
community
definitely
that
came on pretty quick. It was like all of a sudden it was everywhere, and rightfully so. It was funny as shit. So I think, I mean, it
Thanks,
was
man.
deserved, but it was like things were starting to. It felt like things were kind of dying down. With like Twitter falling apart and like the whole like everything got spread, and then this was a kind of a really cool new thing. It was fresh. Greg, everything has felt tired a little bit from my perspective. It's always funny. Like it's not like I was from the beginning or anything, right? I just have like my window, but within that window, that's how it came across. Um, you didn't miss much in early 3.0, by the way. I saw a lot of shows in that like '09 like to 15. I mean, by 15 it was really good, but like I caught so many fucking number lines. Like really your stats would just be packed with joy if you saw a lot of shows back
Oh
then.
man, I missed out.
It was terrible.
I missed Time Turns Elastic, dude. I could have seen some of those. Could have caught a
You
couple of
that song is not aged well. I wanted to
no.
I wanted to say that like I like it and that like I've given it a second chance of going back, but I couldn't say that with a straight face. I feel so bad because Trey was so excited and adamant about it and was like coming out of rehab and was clean and the band's getting back together and they teased that song before anything else and like it was gonna be like the big new Yem
I
or
know.
whatever. And he's like, oh my god.
The new Yem. Oh no. Can you
Yeah.
imagine if they really tried to make that the new Yem? The thing is, probably could have done it. That
Yeah.
if Trey wants you to like a song, he'll make you like the song.
Well, I mean, he'll just tag a monster jam at the end of it. Like fucking Ruby Waves. Everybody loves it now. But when Ghost of Force came out, it was not a huge hit. It's because it has 100% batting average and they tack on a monster jam to it every time. Same thing with Soul Planet.
Yeah,
Literally
dude.
nobody. You cannot tell me with a straight face that you enjoyed Soul Planet as itself isolated song. I mean, I guess if you like being tortured with earworms and singing the same phrase over and over again. But then they put a couple of monster jams on it, and now everybody's like, "Oh yeah, I hope we get a Soul Planet tonight. That get a good jam out of it."
All of a sudden, the ocean is love. Yeah, dude. The first time I went, or the first time I got a Ruby Waves was the big fucking Alpine Ruby Waves in 2019, and like everyone on the lawn around me all went to the bathroom. There's like there's so many people who were at that show. They're like, missed the first 20 minutes of that fucking Ruby Waves, and so because it was Ruby Waves at that point, and now it's Ruby Waves. You can get a 20-minute Ruby Waves,
Well, I mean, how many good, like this past tour, we had two really solid ones. And, I was just going to do the stereotype like podcast thing. I was like, oh, well, actually, this one and that one. I don't know. I'm terrible with stats, but I want to say just generally they've been really solid. That would be a funny t shirt, though. I call it Alpine Ruby Waves and then like from like the urinal or something or from like the bathroom line.
I actually missed it, like on the back in parentheses.
Yeah. So I guess is Fish your main musical interest? Because I know you were saying like you were getting into it and it kind of blew up. So the assumption is that like that's your primary, but like do you have other bands or music or scenes that you consider yourself like to be heavily into and this is just a side thing, or is this like your main musical interest?
As far as like being involved in the scene, yeah, Fish and like the jam scene is kind of like the only one that I'm like a part of in that way. But and Fish is my favorite band, number one
Right.
best best band ever thing. But um, yeah, I mean, I get into other types of music, and I've got like all of my like dad's old rock and roll sensibility with like Rush and Led Zeppelin and Pink Floyd and Zappa and all that
Fair.
stuff is still like what I still listen to that or throw that on mostly, but like love hip hop and loves like newer stuff too. My my girlfriend's a little more into like the house music EDM scene, and so like with me trying to like drag her along to Fish and Dead and Co and all that kind of stuff, like I've also been seeing you know or listening to more of her music and like more house music and that kind of stuff. And
They go
um
well together. I mean, honestly, it's kind of a great after show or like late night festival type music. And I'm taking it that I'm probably a tiny bit older because I was like 5, 10 years ago, we had a very similar situation. We could see a lot of Fish, and then we'd see a lot of house music and stuff. And that was like the give and take. My wife wanted to see one thing, I wanted to see another thing. But
yeah,
oh, I saw you posting about I'm gonna butcher the name, but Giobi. That was the
yeah,
LP. Yeah, she's freaking
LPGA.
awesome.
She was cool. I got to see her. I went up to Cascade Equinox Fest in Oregon to like make videos and stuff, and she was at that. And she was like right after Goose. It was again like late night after show, and I was like, "This is awesome." And it's not my scene really, and I don't do a lot of electronic stuff, but I was loving it. And yeah, now I mean, my girlfriend's like obsessed with her, and so she was at the Roxy last night here in LA, and we went and saw her, and she's great. She's, I mean, the show is awesome, and her like energy on stage is like fucking great. I mean, I don't see a lot of DJ sets. I'm sure that that's a huge part of being a DJ is like getting the crowd
I
excited.
don't either. No, but she's definitely a hell of a performer. And the
Yeah,
weird thing about her is, well, not weird, I guess it's unfortunately normal, but like how torn and split the like community seemed to be when she like first struck popularity and like started doing all the dead stuff, and she like partnered with like Jerry estate and stuff, and like half the community was like instantly in love with her, and then like all these people got super toxic and butthurt about it. And like I think on its surface you could say that it's like a sex thing, but I don't think it was. I think it's more so what we were talking about, like people taking things too seriously and like the sanctity of the music. And like
yeah,
and I can understand that, but the toxicity that came around that thought, like I feel like there was a healthier way to have that conversation. But that was a very polarizing introduction into the scene for her, at least
yeah.
from what I saw.
And she's like ultra heady. Like she's like from Oregon. Like her family is like goes to like the Oregon County Fair or Country Fair like she's been every year since she was a baby. Like she's from very heady
Yeah.
upbringings and beginnings and stuff. And then yeah, I mean people just have like a lot of ownership over this stuff, and they think
Well,
it's
that
gonna get like ruined.
Well,
But
that's the weird part about it, I guess, for me. And like, I'm sorry if I'm going to offend people in the chat, but fuck it.
do
Um,
it.
like, even if she wasn't head, right? Exactly what you're saying is what nullified or pacified everybody. Like, oh, okay, well, she's a true head, so it's okay. She can name 3 songs or whatever. But like, but like, who the fuck? Who's the judge of that? Like, even if she wasn't, like, who
Right.
cares? And like,
Right.
it's an
The
easy
ca-
trap to fall into because like I can get possessive and like defensive of it, right? Because we're so passionate about it, you want to be like, gatekeeping a little bit in a weird, sick way, if we're being honest with ourselves. But like, I don't know. If you take more than a second to think about it, it's like people are a little bit, I don't know, a little bit ridiculous with that, I think.
And like, ultimately there are people who are going to go see her that are going to get introduced to dead music that they wouldn't have otherwise. And,
Exactly.
you could also tear that two ways too if you wanted to. You could be like, that's not how I want people to get introduced to the dead. You can just get introduced to the dead. Like you can just listen to but like it's not always that easy for people. Like people don't always have like the connection that you do to it. People
Yeah.
sometimes listen to the thing that you think is beautiful and they're just like, and
Yeah.
so they hear it with some house music and they go to a show and they are like, what is this? And then all of a sudden they're getting into the dead. If that's like an offshoot of it, that's pretty cool. But she really didn't do any dead sampling last night. It wasn't until she did her encore, she kind of like piped through a little Scarlet Begonias. But for the most part, it's all like new different samples and
Well, she did that
original.
thing with Goose too, which was pretty cool. Like they partnered up. I
Yeah,
think that's even better when it's like teases. Like you don't get any of like, it's all new stuff, but then like she teases Scarlet Begonias and you're like, it's the same thing when you're listening to a jam and you hear a random tease, you're like, oh, I hear that.
yeah,
You
and
do that Leo thing.
she was super cool. Like she did that. Yeah, yeah, do it like that. I mean,
Yeah.
she was super cool. Like, it was like a minute before she started actually doing, Scarlet Begonias, she like piped in one little lyric of it and then like took it away. And then like a minute later, like a little bit more. Like it was a little like a jam, And
Yeah.
so and I'm like telling this to my girlfriend in the car who has seen a lot of electronic music and then also jam music with me. And she's like, yeah, it is like a jam, you fucking idiot. Like, are you the first person to ever think this ever? You dork.
Dork.
Yeah. Dork.
Uh, my my wife says that too. Like she likens everything to jam bands and fish and stuff as like a way to like get me interested. She's like, oh yeah, it's kind of like the fish of this or whatever. And I'm like, oh okay,
Yeah.
I'll check it out.
Nice. Sick.
And then I'm the one that's telling myself, I was like, man, I'm an idiot.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I like saw Pretty Lights this summer and I'm like, she's a massive Pretty Lights fan and like would have loved to seen that show and she didn't get to go with me. And then I'm like telling her about the show afterwards. She's like, yeah, I know. She's like, I've been listening to that for years. You're preaching to the choir.
So your podcast, now that we're 30 minutes in, it's called Best Show Ever. I guess that's a double take on that it's the best podcast ever, and you have a little bit of hubris, but also the premise is that you discuss with your guests the best show they've ever seen. Super
Yeah.
interesting. I like the generic, or I don't want to say it's generic, but I like the
Yeah.
open-ended topic because it allows for a lot of different paths to be taken, and it doesn't, lock you in. And that's also the way you, Kate, direct your thing. But I gonna do the stereotype of, well, let's flip the script. What is the best show that you have ever seen?
I feel like I have said three different shows on three different podcasts at this point.
Yes.
But
Make one
I
up. It's
yeah, it's 2029 at the Sphere. No, I think the best show that has all of the elements of like what a best show should be is 8/6/21 Deer Creek Fish.
I was at that
Um,
show. That's a good show.
it's
Wait,
a really
which
good.
one was that? 21 was the first year. Because is that this last time they were at Deer Creek, or was that?
That was the
No,
first
that was the
year. It
first
was
one.
like
Yeah, yeah,
so it was like right after COVID, and I
yeah,
think that's
yeah, yeah,
part of
yeah.
it. That's the first show we saw after COVID, which is a huge part of it.
Oh my
You
god,
know,
how overwhelming was that? Like coming back and like all the build up for those couple of years, and then that I know it's not technically. I know Alpine is bigger, but that specific show, that first show, it felt like the biggest lawn I'd ever been on because like
yeah,
all those people all together with that much energy, it gave me goosebumps.
it was almost like, I mean, you knew people were going to show up, but you're like, they're all here.
Yeah, yeah,
Everyone,
everybody came back. We're doing it.
yeah,
We're doing
nice.
it. That was awesome.
It was so awesome, and like that night, like, um, they like I had a ticket stub for that show for 2020. Like
Oh right.
we got the ticket stubs early, and like all that. So then, yeah, that we just so much anticipation for that show, and then they opened up with like a great, like super
Thanks,
blissful
Dr. Dave.
Carini.
Yeah, the Creanie opener was a really cool way to open a show, I thought. So I didn't mean
And
to cut that off, but I just
no,
felt
no,
touched. That was a very sweet sentiment. That was
oh,
really one of the nicest parts. Well, I ran into Dr. Dave a couple of times actually. We in this 4.0, we've seemed to run into each other. Although for the last year I have not been touring, which is very sad, but anyway.
hey
Um
man,
what are you
life
going to
stuff,
do?
we
Yeah,
gotta do.
exactly. Yeah, that was a great weekend. So did you just hit the one show or did you do the run or
Did the whole run.
yeah.
And yeah, that was like, like I said, I haven't seen a lot of shows with my older brother who kind of got me into it. And he was there for that whole weekend. That was one of the first shows that he was like cool to go, And so having him and then his buddy Tony, who's like kind of like our wook uncle, we
Yeah.
call him Uncle Tony. They were both there with us, and then it was like me and my little brother and our buddy Willie, who's like essentially our, fourth brother. Yeah, it was like perfect vibes, best people to be there with. We had this cool cabin on like a lake that we got for super cheap. Like,
Oh,
you
that's
know,
awesome.
yeah, the shows were like, we loved the venue, and the people that we met that weekend were still like talking to and hanging out with. And yeah, I mean, it was like just a perfect weekend. It felt like 3 really good shows. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think everything you're describing about that, I felt the very much the same way. I think that lot is underrated too. It harkens back to the old lots so much and so well compared to what has become of pretty much. I don't know. Maybe it's the venues I've been to, but I feel like the vast majority of lots have lost the lottiness of them, and like that one is just a free for all, just one big giant open lot, and like all the
Yeah.
vending starts super early, and it was just like it's a very awesome venue, awesome lot, scary as shit. And like, so are you from Chicago? Are you from
So
the Midwest or
yeah, I was born in Schaumburg, Illinois, and
okay?
then moved up to Wisconsin when I was like 8. So I'm really from Wisconsin.
Okay, so probably not as scary for you, but as somebody who was born and raised in Jersey and is like never really left the East Coast, until an adult, driving through miles and miles and miles of cornfields is just like this has an eerie feeling to it. It's like
Yeah,
going up
dude.
to the venue is like, holy shit.
You ever
I
done
was
Alpine?
no, no, yeah, I mean I've done Dick's, but I was gonna say mostly I stick to the East Coast and Deer Creek in Tennessee. I guess east of the Mississippi. I don't even know if it's east of the Mississippi. I'm terrible at geography, but no, I haven't done Alpine. Is the easy answer to your
Yeah.
question?
Well, Alpine, that was like kind of our home venue. And so like, and it's like 40 minutes from our house, which is like perfect and also not perfect. Like it's
Right,
like, it's like getting home at the end of the night there is like, I mean, you're like through the back roads and it's like
white
winding, turning
knuckle.
roads. Yeah, all the way back to the house. There's no city, there's like almost no town in between like my house and Alpine. But it's the best. It really is the
Yeah.
best.
I would love that. That's on my bucket list. It's like funny because everybody has like the really glamorous, nice venues on like the bucket list. Like, oh, I want to go out to the gorge or I want to, see some Red Rocks
Yeah.
or whatever. And like those are all nice and stuff. But like I go back to like historical, like huge venues like the history of the band and stuff. Right. Like catching Star Lake for the first time was a big one for me. Catching Deer Creek
Yeah.
was a big one, like the man. So like Alpine is one of the last like really major historical venues that I absolutely have to catch. And I've heard it's or I guess I've seen it's the biggest venue they play, right? Like it's just fucking giant lawn.
It's a massive, massive lawn. And people do have gripes about that lawn, that it's like too steep or it's too big or,
Oh
whatever.
no.
It is. It is really steep. If you're at the bottom of that hill, getting up it at the end of the night is almost impossible. And so it's it's tough. But I mean, like, yeah, that like all of the like knowing, downhill from here, there, and like the late 90s fish with like the Alpine Fluff Head is there. Like you said, like the historic venue aspect of it is cool every time. And it's like never really changed. Like Deer Creek is like upgraded with like cool new concessions and like they've got
Right. And the
nice,
VIP corners and
yeah. And like
yeah.
Alpine is like they might have just painted the building and that's it. Like there's just it's like the same as it was in the 80s. And I love that. I don't need the upgraded
I
venue. I
think
kind
Deer
of want
Creek had to upgrade because it got crashed. The gates got crashed so many times, and they were like, "Oh shit, maybe this layout isn't working." Hey, what's up,
we gotta
Mike?
redo this.
Oh, I wanted to go back on some of these chat things, and
Yeah.
they've been popping off. SC, we don't talk about show counts here because I think it detracts from the conversation. No offense.
I've seen
Uh,
100,000 shows. How about that?
I had a hard fast rule against flexing for years on here because it's like I don't give a shit if you've seen. It's gonna be one of three things. You're gonna say a count that's way extraordinarily higher than everyone here, and it's gonna put like a weird like elitist thing, or it's gonna be a way small number, smaller than everybody thinks, and then people are gonna like skew their view of what you're saying, or it's gonna be like right in the middle average and be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But like honestly, it doesn't fucking matter. In my opinion, I think. I mean, I guess it matters if depending on how you're having that conversation. But like, I don't like the like what we were just talking about with Jubby. Like, it's like you don't need to, people don't need to like earn the right to be a fan and to like talk about the band. It's like if it impacts
Yeah.
you and if you've listened to it, I think that's what matters. But yeah,
And
exactly. Rather hear about the experience than the count. Talking about your show with your brother is infinitely more fascinating to me than talking about how many shows you've seen.
I do feel myself get really defensive when that question comes up though, because it'll be like even before when you're like, when did you start listening to the band? I was like, well, it was
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
my
yeah.
brother and the limelight. Like you feel like you've got to like defend it or like make sense of why it's not more, but like it is what it is, and like I
Everybody
would have
has
loved,
different reasons and perspective and age and finances and like there's a million different
yeah,
reasons and it's all fine.
yeah. But I've caught him when I've caught him, and I've loved what I've caught. So
Exactly. I think if I were to have to answer the best show question, it would be the last show I've ever seen because that's kind of like the attitude that I go through with it is like whatever I've just saw when I'm coming out, it was the best show that I've ever seen. And it makes it weird switching to like doing the after shows because we do the after shows after every Fish show now, right? And so like
yeah,
I have to like I can't just go on there and be like that was the best fucking show ever every single time, right? But there's a huge difference between like having a critical, not critical, like, but like, well, critical in the sense of actually like a little bit of analysis and recapping versus the experience. And I think the experience is always just this is the best shit ever. But
yeah,
then because we like, I did the same thing when we weren't on air, we would just talk about it on lot. It's the same thing. You come out and you talk, we talk about it in a fun way. That just was like 6 different points. I just want to put a bow on everything we talked about today.
no, it's exactly like that. I mean, there's 1,000 Wook pluses going on in the lot after the show. 4 buddies talking about what they just saw, and one of them is like, "That was the greatest," and then one of the other ones is like, "All right, fucking chill out," and then like that's just that's the nature of this thing. And I feel like when I go to shows like without my brother or without like my core group of people who I go to show with, I'll text them after a show. I'll be like, that was the best show of all time. And they're like,
Yeah.
you're a fucking idiot, and then like, they'll go see a show without me and they'll text afterwards like, that was the best fucking cross-eyed ever. And you're like, shut the fuck up, like that's when you're there. It would be impossible for me to do a recap podcast. It would be an awful channel. It would just be me like, wow.
Well, I mean, we're not that far off. We do end up fluffing a little bit, but I mean, I'm unapologetically too because like we enjoy it, and it's like what we're here for. But I don't know. I also don't mind. I feel like it's like when somebody makes fun of your sister or brother, you'll go fisticuffs and you're like fuck off. But then when you're hanging out with your brother, be like say something.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing. It's like I feel like if we're all doing it in good taste and like we're all fans and passionate about it, it's fun to we can talk about it more critical. But then like when like somebody who's not a Fish fan comes in and says something about the music, I'm like whoa 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 whoa, like, shut the fuck up. Well, I had a couple other thoughts, but my brain is just all over the place on this Sunday morning. Was there anything else that we wanted to touch on? Chad, what do you guys got? You guys are going off right now. I can't keep up. Crazy, crazy, crazy. Oh yeah, bad takes. Live in Florida. Wave. I don't know. Anyway, I think we'll call it there because my brain is done. I need to get more coffee. I really appreciate you coming on and hanging out with me. We'll have to do this again soon. I know we used to do a lot of bits on the channel, like people that have seen it. I would love to have you on one day. Maybe we'll do like some sort of joint effort collab on some sort of bit because I'd love to bring those videos and bits back into the scene a little bit more. But really appreciate it, man. This has been awesome.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. And I'd love to anytime you guys want to dick around on one of these or do some bits. I'm down.
It's my favorite thing. We just stick around and listen to Fish.
Yeah, I love it. I love it.
Oh, like and subscribe, everybody. Let us know in the comments what you think about Cam's videos. I don't know. But be nice.
Roasted.
All right. We'll see you guys next time.